AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Welcome to another edition of the Curt Schilling Podcast. Got a great show lined up. We're going to get right to it because I want to make sure we squeeze in both James O'Keefe and Matthew Boyle. Starting off sound bites today. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. Listen to her speaking the other day and basically calling law enforcement agents criminals as she refers to ICE.
I happen to believe that an agency that has repeatedly, systematically, and violently committed human rights abuses cannot be reformed. That's what I believe. Not under this administration, especially. And it's time that we take that tool away. It's time that we take that tool away. Not just ICE, but our system of mass incarceration too. It's time we realize that cannot be separated. Those issues cannot be separated from a dignified and living wage for people to come home to and reintegrate into their society. That is not separated from the ability to extend tuition-free college to all, to reinvest in communities that have historically been redlined, because the success of our most vulnerable is the success of the nation. How we treat Flint is how we treat America.
I got to tell you, do you not just get blown away by the fact that the left continues to try and stand up for the rights of criminals and just people who don't follow the law? And I got to tell you, from a hair on your neck standing up perspective, no one probably irritates me and makes me want to punch him in the Adam's apple more than Eric Swalwell every time he opens his mouth. And I just can't help but be blown away by the kind of people that have to live in a district to elect this clown. But he was on MSNBC's AM with Joy Reid, the race-baiting bigot who lied to us. Him opening his mouth is enough. Just listen up.
Congressman Swalwell, your thoughts on the idea that Donald Trump believes that his powers of persuasion are so great that he would be able to walk into Robert Mueller's investigative unit and convince them that their own investigation is a witch hunt?
Well, what's taking so long, Joy, if that's really what he believes? I mean, he's the one that complains every day that this investigation is taking so long, and it looks like they've interviewed everyone that Donald Trump has ever known except Donald Trump. And so, for all the complaints he has about, the length of this investigation, if he were to just answer the questions that, by the way, have already been provided to him, I bet this whole investigation would be wrapped up a lot sooner.
Well, and the other question is, and I can't resist asking you this because you do serve in the U.S. House of Representatives, where your colleagues on the other side of the aisle have also claimed that this was a witch hunt, have also, a couple of them, threatened to impeach Rod Rosenstein, who would receive whatever report comes out of Robert Mueller's office. Is there any inkling on the other side of the aisle, a bit of embarrassment at the stance they've taken, given the way things are going?
Oh, no, zero. Joy, and I think that will only come from the voters this November. And I've heard across the country, I've been helping a lot of our younger candidates running across the country and going to their districts in rural areas, in suburban areas. This issue is actually very much at the top of their mind, not so much as to what did the president do with the Russians. They're going to let Bob Mueller figure that out. But what is the president doing to the rule of law and to our democracy, and who is willing to stand up to him as he is a wrecking ball? And I think the Republicans are going to pay a price this November, and I hope those that have been fearful of doing the right thing because they don't want the president to tweet at them or call them out on a speech, I hope in January, when it's a Democratic majority, they realize it's time to do the right thing, because we're going to have 2 more years of this wrecking ball, and it's time for all of us to put our hands together and just push that big red button that will make it stop.
So I live for those vindication moments, the moments when someone who's been bullied gets a chance to stand up. And this past week, Sarah Huckabee Sanders got that chance, and I want you to listen to her just basically verbally undress and beat the crap out of Jim Acosta from CNN. Listen up.
I just wanted to follow up on Sarah's question from NPR. She asked you about Ivanka Trump's statement that the press is not the enemy of the people. And she asked you whether or not the press is the enemy of the people. You read off a laundry list of your concerns about the press and things that you feel like are misreported, but you did not say that the press is not the enemy of the people. And I think it would be a good thing if you were to say right here at this briefing that the press, the people who are gathered in this room right now, doing their jobs every day, asking questions of officials like the ones you brought forward earlier, are not the enemy of the people. I think we deserve that.
I think the president has made his position known. I also think it's ironic.
Would you mind telling us,
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, well,
I politely waited, and I even called on you despite the fact that you interrupted me while calling on your colleague.
Well,
I said it's ironic.
Which is why I interrupted.
I'm trying.
But if you finish, if you would not mind letting me have a follow-up, that would be fine. But
it's ironic, Jim, that not only you and the media attack the president for his rhetoric when they frequently lower the level of conversation in this country. Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. The media has attacked me personally on a number of occasions, including your own network, said I should be harassed as a life sentence, that I should be choked. ICE officials are not welcomed in their place of worship, and personal information is shared on the internet. When I was hosted by the Correspondents Association, of which almost all of you are members of, you brought a comedian up to attack my appearance and call me a traitor to my own gender. In fact, as I know, as far as I know, I'm the first press secretary in the history of the United States that's required Secret Service protection. The media continues to ratchet up the verbal assault against the president and everyone in this administration, and certainly we have a role to play, but the media has a role to play for the discourse in this country as well.
That's a mic drop right there. Jim Acosta is a clown. He's turned into he's a punchline. Him and Lemon and Tapper, all of them have turned into jokes. They have no respect for their profession or integrity, which has been proven over the last 18 months. I don't have a problem. I love media that wants to present an objective opinion and does so, but I can't stand cowards who refuse to act and admit what they are, even though they act that way every day. That's a soundbite for the ages right there. And God bless Sarah. I feel horrible. And again, which party is the party of women? The left would have you believe they're for everybody's equal rights, but they're full of crap. They're not. They're only for minorities and women and LGBTQ that are liberal. Ask Milo. Look at Kanye West, Sarah Sanders, Candace Owens. Anyway, listen to this one. Al Cardenas, Helen Cooper, Robert Costin, Elanya Johnson, joined by Republican strategist Mike Murphy, talking about President Trump's influence over Republican politics on NBC's Meet the Press. Listen up.
Trump has redefined what the party is. Let me show you something real quick here. These are all the endorsement tweets he does, and they're all probably written by Dan Scavino. It's sending the message of what Trump's Republican Party is for: border security, military, vets. Tough on crime. You don't hear taxes. You don't hear national defense. It's not Reagan-like. You don't even hear morality stuff, probably for obvious reasons.
Yeah, look, the die's cast. People in the party have decided that he is the general. They're going to win or lose with him. Everybody else is going to be a soldier, and they're moving along with the general in order to try to win the election. It's a high risk, high reward, or high punishment situation. And this election is going to be decided by Donald Trump.
But, Mike, let me reverse.
By Donald Trump's situation.
Let me defend the strategy here for an odd second, which is the president says, hey, look, it's going to be a referendum on him anyway. Isn't it better for the party, rather than run away from him? Well, I'm going to get saddled with him whether I like it or not. Is this oddly maybe a way to at least minimize your losses?
You know, I get that. The problem in swing states for Trump is so big, there is no easy way out of it except building a time machine and finding courage a year ago. That ain't going to happen. So in the North Dakotas of the world, this strategy will pretty much work. But in the swing states, it's a lot tougher. Now, the funny thing, the great irony of this is if you look at who Trump likes to endorse with his tweets, it's people who have done the opposite of him, served in the military versus a Yale graduate, I believe, down in Florida, versus Iffy. So it's weird. He's kind of reaching to a persona that's even better than his own with these endorsements.
They are telling you again, every one of them are telling you again that we're going to see a blue wave. Not listening to the public, but and not listening to the people that are screaming, but they're listening to themselves. And that blue wave, apparently, that they're all planning on, which I believe is going to not exist, at a time when more Americans are employed now than at any point in recorded history. They're trying to tell you that it's losing politics. And finally, listen, before I play this last soundbite, let me just remind you that an M16 is a automatic weapon that was used by right around Vietnam, pre-Vietnam times, as a weapon of war. It is not legal to own in any place. Language matters, words matter. But I want you to listen to Jimmy Kimmel talking about his desire and ability to be a moral compass.
Kimmel, who turns 51 in November, was always the lovable frat boy at 11:30. But like other late-night hosts, he put comedy on hold after last fall's Las Vegas massacre.
Maybe I'm nuts, but I would like to think we can put politics aside and agree that no American citizen needs an M16 or 10 of them. And maybe that way we don't do this again.
Kimmel's call for gun control after the shooting was both praised and criticized.
You've heard there's one conservative commentator in particular who says, who made Jimmy Kimmel the moral arbiter?
I'm not. I mean, yeah, I agree with them. I'm nobody's moral arbiter. I mean, you don't have to watch the show. You don't have to listen to what I say.
His monologues, written just before every show, have drawn fire from critics who bash him for everything from being wrong on gun control to being soft on Harvey Weinstein.
It's a bit of a risk that you're taking talking about that stuff. You might lose the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, I don't know if it was a study or a poll or some combination of those two things that like 3 years ago, I was equally liked by Republicans and Democrats, and then Republican numbers went way down, like 30% or whatever. And, you know, as a talk show host, that's not ideal, but I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So you don't mind if Republicans turn off your show? They're not watching anymore?
I don't say I don't mind. I mean, I love for everyone. I want everyone with a television to watch the show. But if they're so turned off by my opinion on healthcare and gun violence, then I don't know. I probably won't want to have a conversation with them anyway.
This is a guy who's put himself on the wrong side of just about every argument out there by lying, or by misrepresenting what healthcare is and does while ignoring the rest of the world. He tries to make comparisons that aren't appropriate. And I'm glad he has opinions. That's great. But language matters. And when he talks about those people, you know, owning something or being something, he disregards and ignores real world. The real world. You can't own an M16. Are you talking about the AR-15? Because that's a completely different conversation. The AR-15 and the M16 aren't the same thing. There is a difference between automatic and semi-automatic, and we learned this weekend that the liberals don't understand that because they ask for a ban on all semi-automatic, fully automatic weapons. Yes, you heard that right. They want to ban all semi-automatic, fully automatic weapons. Anyway, you're not going to want to miss this, guys. James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, and the what's going to blow up into one of the, I think, the biggest college football stories, college sports stories in our lifetimes, Urban Meyer and Ohio State. Back in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Why did we see some of the Republican kissing of Mark Zuckerberg that was taking place?
I called it kissing the ring because I felt like every single person practically had to kiss the ring of this guy, you know, who wants to do nothing except get all those people out of office. So, bizarre behavior from the Republicans.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now is a gentleman who in the last 2 years I think has done more serious journalism than the rest of the world combined, investigative journalism, that is. He is Project Veritas James O'Keefe. Good morning, James. How are you, buddy?
Good morning. Great to be with you today.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Listen, I'm going to get right to it. I've actually been talking about this on my other show, the Urban Meyer incident at Ohio State, and it turns out that calling it an incident would be shortchanging it because it appears to be a lifetime pattern of abuse of the rules and of his athletes. And I was saying before, it makes me sad to think that the 4 years that should have been the highlight of these gentlemen, the young men's lives, well, based on what the things that you guys found out, I want you to just talk a little bit about what it was you heard that kind of got you going down this road and what the investigation revealed.
Well, we started out looking into the FBI's, I guess, looking into college basketball. So we decided to look into that as it pertains to college football. And while we were looking at that, we learned of players who corroborated each other's stories about Urban Meyer. And this was about 10 days ago. We were talking to players who went to the University of Florida. All of these players went to the University of Florida: Xavier Nixon, Gideon Ajabe, Josh Evans, and they started talking about things like something called the Valentine's Day Massacre, where I guess this was what they called the workout where guys' legs exploded, lactic acid built up in the legs. They did it to failure. And these are pretty tough guys, but they were all corroborating each other's stories about the physical abuse they experienced under this coach. So we had this amongst other video that we were obtaining to try to expose scandals in college sports. And then suddenly Thursday, this Urban Meyer story exploded. So we released a story the next day about Urban Meyer. And again, the jury's out whether this is just tough coaching, whether it crosses the line.
No.
But one of these guys, yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, James, the jury's not out. This is not tough coaching. There's a difference. This is abuse in some cases, physical, mental, and verbal. There's nothing about this that is tough coaching. I promise you that.
Fair enough. And Gideon does say that, he said he contemplated committing suicide. One of the common themes that we experienced, talking to these players was the emotional manipulation. So, like, one of the things that Gideon says, linebacker from the University of Florida, he says, quote, he's attributing this to Urban Meyer. He says, when you don't do good in practice, he'll use it as fuel to motivate you. He'll say, hey, I thought you were trying to get your mom out of the hood. Sort of a racial comment there that the coach makes. And a lot of these players these are tough guys. And one of them talks about getting a Gatorade bottle thrown at him, and you might think, well, that's just throwing a Gatorade bottle. But this was so impactful to the players, they contemplated throwing it back at him. So this is sort of the line probably has been crossed.
Well, yeah, and let me just follow that up. I spent my entire life being coached. And I can tell you, when a coach brings you to the point of contemplation of suicide, he's not coaching you. That's not what coaching is. Coaching is about motivating young men and women to push themselves beyond boundaries that they thought they could do. It's about inspiring guys to perform. It's about making players go beyond where they thought they could physically go in a way that when they look back on it, they realize that you made them better as human beings. It's not about again, when you contemplating suicide and the person motivating you to commit suicide is a coach, that's not coaching.
One of the things that, Curt, that we've experienced is that, we're taking on the sacred cow. I mean, this is I thought, you see if politics was sacred cow. I mean, exposing the heart and soul of one of the most powerful football programs and its coach. There's a lot of blowback on this one. I mean, people are religious in their devotion to their team, and they say, what are you, a Michigan fan? That's what people are telling me. Right. First of all, I'm not a Michigan fan. I'm not an Ohio State fan. Frankly, my beat is politics. And people are religious in their defense for this program and its coach, is what I'm experiencing. But these players, I mean, one of the things about the Gideon Ajabe story is if you listen to this guy talk, if you haven't watched the video, like Curt says, I mean, this guy talks about, I mean, it's really tragic, you know, contemplating suicide and talking about how his arm was dangling from his socket limp after the physical abuse, and when he talked to the coach threatened him. And that's when he contemplated suicide. And the other players didn't know what was going on, so they were making fun of him.
There's a dynamic here. All of this stuff, in my opinion, I don't want to say it pales in comparison. What we're going to find out that he knew about his coach and the spousal abuse is going to make all this stuff go away, I think, because what he did and what his wife did, I believe, is a crime. However, the more devastating thing for me, James, as a parent, when you commit to a college, your parents are literally trusting the coaching staff with helping raise your son or daughter and help make them, you know, because listen, the percentage of these guys that go from high school to college to the pros is small, minute. And so your job as a coach is to prepare these men and women for the real world. And again, you don't prepare someone for the real world by making them thinking about killing themselves. That's just not how this works.
Yeah. And one of the things that Gideon says is, I've forgiven him. He wasn't, this is Urban Meyer he's talking about, he didn't curse, he wasn't a loud person, but he was the type of person that would get all the information he needs about you, and then he would use it to manipulate you, use it against you. And one of the people on Twitter said, well, come on, Vince Lombardi was a tough coach, you know, he probably did some things, but as you fairly pointed out here, real coaches inspire you. They bring the best out of you. They don't make you fundamentally question yourself and self-doubt yourself. And to your point, yes, that's one of the things that, by the way, I've had people reach out to me over the last 3 days after you broke this story, other players, Curt, in college football, University of Florida.
I was going to wonder, you're talking about, and I tell people, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make this point because I know what you're getting ready to say. This is a multi-billion-dollar business, folks. This isn't a game. Okay, and so these programs at Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn, they are bigger than everything else. And I was dying to find out if after this came out, if you had other players from Florida or from Ohio State reaching out to you.
Yes, we've had a lot of Florida, which is, if people don't know, he coached the University of Florida, then went to Ohio State. And now we're learning the reason why he left the University of Florida. Yes, and as with most sources who voluntarily come to me, I have to convince these people to go on the record. And the problem is, Curt, like the Me Too movement, this is extremely sacred cow. None of these people want to talk publicly about it. None of them. There's a couple guys right now I'm talking to that are so fed up and so disgusted and frankly so inspired by the testimony of the people that we uncovered. These players are not villains. They're not villains. They're whistleblowers against villains. And one or two of these guys is willing to give an interview to me, and I'm working on getting that interview. And they all are talking about it happens not just at University of Florida, not just with Urban Meyer. I mean, college football is more brutal than the NFL, much more. And the players don't get paid. They don't get paid.
Right.
Now, that's one of the things that the guys were telling me. They're like, well, in the NFL, at least the players get millions and millions of dollars. We get nothing. And our parents trusted us. So I can't speak about some of these players' stories without their consent, and I'm trying to get that consent. But, yes, to answer your question, we've had people come to us who were recruited by Urban Meyer and want to talk about what he did. Now, some of these things you have to be careful because it doesn't want to be sour grapes. It has to be real abuse. But a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork now to talk about this. And maybe this becomes a watershed moment for sports. Maybe. But we're facing sacred cows here. We're facing a billion-dollar industry that's probably even more brutal than politics is.
You know, it's one of those things where you look at, you have to look back at Project Veritas in the history, and some of the stuff that you've exposed should have been watershed moments for different places and different times and different topics. And look how hard the system has worked against that. You think about the fact that you've been personally attacked in ways that I can't fathom for telling people the truth. Let's be very clear about something. This quote right here, if Urban Meyer, if he knew that you were not really smart, he would put you in front of the team and make you do trivia, and everyone would laugh at you. Coward is all I can come up with. That's what a coward does. A coward in a position of power, which he was, and he knew he was. And you're right. This is not a game. This is to the coaches. It's not a game. This is the first time I think a lot of athletes get exposed to the business of sports is at these Division I colleges like this. And there's no doubt in my mind that it's a culture. This is not a one-off. This is not, we've seen enough video, James, of high school coaches behind the scenes, much less college. These guys bring in hundreds of millions of dollars for these colleges, and it is a win-at-all-costs venture. And the cost is these young men's lives and their futures.
When Brett McMurphy, Curt, broke that story about the text messages he obtained about Urban Meyer knowing about domestic abuse, one of the things that Clay Travis pointed out is he said this in a tweet, if you ever wondered whether you could trust ESPN to cover sports honestly, there wasn't one word on their website about that scandal, not one word. Until Thursday afternoon, they were forced to cover it, right? This is a big nexus of power and money. It's not much different than politics, like CNN and these other networks being dragged, kicking and screaming into covering scandals. And if you look at these sports programs, they're tied to the leagues that they're supposed to investigate. So this is a sacred cow, as you point out. It's a cultural issue. It's crossing the line. People are torn about it, and if you want real news, you're not going to really get it. So I think that when these sources come out, Curt, more and more sources come out, people are not going to be able to malign me or malign them. It's very hard to malign Gideon Ajabe, who's talked about contemplating suicide after being emotionally manipulated, threatened to send him back to the ghetto, and these sorts of comments that Urban Meyer was making. This is not an inspirational program. Again, tough coaching is necessary, but this is, to your point, probably crossed the line, and there's more stories coming out too.
I'm very, very comfortable in saying that at no point in time is this even remotely related to coaching. There's nothing about these things that you saw. There's nothing about the quotes that you got. None of them has anything to do with coaching. This is, what this is? This is an abusive parent, James. This is what an abusive parent does to a child. This is an abusive parent trying to live their life through their child. The examples that you've got here, just the few examples in this article that Stephen Gordon did. Because here's the thing, ultimately, if you are a leader, if you are a coach, at the bottom of your soul is a deep care and a concern for the men that you coach, the young men that you coach, and their futures, and their well-being mentally and physically. And none of this made these people better men. This turned these guys into future abusive coaches. This is not different than I think, than spousal abuse, growing up in a home of abuse. When these guys get to the pros, the few that do, this is what they know coaching is to be, right? Because it doesn't change in the pros.
That's very strong coming from you. I mean, I from your words to other people's ears, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I haven't spent my professional life being coached. I can just tell you that there's a lot of pushback from people because they don't want to accept this truth. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's not an easy thing to see. And let me reiterate something. A lot of these players are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid, just like any other sacred cow, they're afraid of what might happen to them. And even one of the players I talked to, I can't mention the guy's name and I can't mention the guy's program because he hasn't consented yet to an interview, but he says, I respect the institution, the college that I went to. He's talking about a different program. I want the team to succeed. I want them to win. And I admire the idea of the institution, but this particular situation, this particular coach was rotten. So it's a struggle in the players' souls because they don't want to hurt the institution. I think from a public policy perspective, people always say, what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? The one thing we heard commonly was that the players ought to be paid. And I'm coming from this from my perspective. I'm naive. You would think that the NFL is the most brutal thing. That's certainly what we hear in the culture. No, according to the players, the college football programs are far more brutal and tough, and they don't get paid. And Urban Meyer makes $7.6 million. His salary is $7.6 million a year. And in a billion-dollar industry, the players do not get paid, and some of these players don't go on to play in the NFL, and they're scarred. Most of them don't go into play, and they're scarred. They're emotionally damaged and scarred. And again, Curt, I'm only telling you what I get on Twitter, and people go, "Oh, come on,
Listen,
James."
James, you're having to kid glove this for legal reasons, and I get that, but I don't. And I'm telling you right now, nothing you've reported here, you can't say it loud enough. This is, I can't help but think, and I wonder if you ever thought about this. Listening to you talk about the guys that haven't come forward yet, it sounds very much to me like mafia informants. They're scared to death to tell you their story for reasons of blowback.
I've experienced in my career the Hillary Clinton campaign. Bob Creamer met with Sinclair Media. I don't know what was said in that meeting. I can only hypothesize, but some type of veiled threat. If you cover this, blah blah blah. It's the same thing. It's no different. I would say it's worse in sports than it is in politics, as far as I'm concerned. This whole idea of taking on the sacred cows, the so-called mafia. But the players, I mean, again, this is the unique thing about this investigation is the players are not the villains. Usually when I film people and they're talking, these are innocent people who are afraid to say what we've uncovered publicly. And after amassing a dozen of them or so, our stories all corroborate each other, so the public can't blame the players, although, Curt, they have. Half of the people the comments that I've seen, "Oh, come on, that's just throwing a water bottle at someone," and that might be your first instinct. However, one of the things that Josh Evans and Gideon and Xavier say from University of Florida is, "I wanted to throw it back at him." Now, a real and to your point, if you're really inspirational and you're really bringing the best out of someone, why would they feel so threatened by someone throwing a bottle full of Gatorade? So that's the thing that struck us. These are strong, tough guys, and they felt damaged by this physical abuse. So, look, there's more to come, and we're trying to get some of these other players on the record. ESPN hasn't mentioned one word about these videos. They haven't played anything. No one played any of the video. Unbelievable.
Yeah, telling. Listen, I got to have you back, James. This is a story that we need to blow up, and like all of the other stuff that you've done. And I apologize for the personal attacks ahead of time because you're going to get them. I know you're already getting them, but God bless you for telling the truth and doing the work, buddy. And I'm gonna talk about this one far and wide. So Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, guys, check out the story. I call it devastating. It's sad in every possible way, but it's absolutely real and it's real world. James, thank you so much.
Thank you. Stay tuned.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
The real thing that the left is angry about is they're like, how could you allow these Russian memes? Somebody saw a meme and then they decided they had to vote for Trump. Or it must have been fake news. And by fake news, they mean conservative websites. Come on. But this is what the left thinks. Fake news. And by fake news, what they mean is shut down Breitbart.
Breitbart News Tonight. Weeknights starting at 9 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125. We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now is Matt Boyle. Matt, I want to talk to you real quick. I just got off with James O'Keefe. I was talking to him about this Urban Meyer thing, this college football thing. As someone who grew up in a clubhouse, who my entire life I was coached at different levels by every kind of manager, coach you can imagine, I got to tell you, I'm sad. I guess that's the word. I'm sad. And the fact of the matter is that this is a guy who destroyed the lives of young men. Well, I mean, you got 100 guys in the college football program, Matt. 5 of them maybe go to the NFL. The other 95 are people going out in the real world. And the power that the college football coach wields is just mind-boggling, especially in a place like Ohio State.
Look, first off, James O'Keefe is a fantastic journalist. The work that he does in exposing all sorts of different things is incredible. And I think we're seeing lots of these types of things across the sports world, where we're seeing different coaches and people in positions of authority and so on and so forth really start to be exposed for some of the abuses of power that they've had, whether it be different coaches that were engaged in malfeasant sexual type behavior, or whether it be coaches who engaged in psychological problems with their players, and this is a big deal. I think culturally for us. I mean, look, one of the things that is really uniquely American is that we have all of these different sports. I mean, other countries have, soccer, whatever. But I mean, we've got 4 really solid sports in hockey, baseball, football,
Big
and
4.
basketball, and they're a backbone of our society. Kids grow up playing these at different levels, whether it be anywhere from
Matt,
little league all the way through the pros
many
and the
ways-
majors, right? Like, and these culturally, it's something that is uniquely American, and it's important that we protect those cultural institutions, to thrive as a society. It's part of
At what
who
cost?
we are as a nation.
At what cost? Is it how that's the question, right? At what cost did you carry those on? Because, like I said, listen, I've been coached by every brand of coach you can imagine. I can tell you this: a coach, a manager, whatever you want to call them, their job is to coach a team, and to these college kids, you've got a coach. To motivate, and it's to inspire. To lead is to push people and get people to do things that they never thought they were capable of doing. That's not what happened here. This is a guy who had players of his contemplating suicide after being examined by medical professionals. Ajagbe became depressed and struggled with pills. He says, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was suicidal. These are some of the toughest of the tough guys, right? And these are kids that are worshipped their whole lives, whose parents have put all of their trust into a college program to help raise their son. And most of them know this is not going to end up with the NFL. This is going to end up with a college scholarship of some kind or an education, hopefully. But these guys are because of the money, period. It's all because of the money. Urban Meyer makes, I think, $7.6 million a year.
Why is a college coach making that much, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, again, I just think there's a lot of things that we need to look into in all of this different system, right? Like, to make sure that, because we don't want to lose sight of what the good parts of these sports, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of good that this does for our society, whether it be the school spirit at these different universities, right? Like, I mean, college football is a huge deal throughout our country,
right?
And it's generally been a force for good, right? Like, it's fostered team spirit, it's fostered school spirit, so on and so forth. It's like I said, it's been the cultural backbone of our society, but we don't want to ruin our society by
hey, I want to
destroying these people. And I think what James has done is fantastic work as always.
Getting crushed for doing it, as always, because he's telling the truth. There's been a lot of stuff going on this past weekend. President Trump has made his clarification on fake news and real news, and the media continues to go crazy. Apparently, Jim Acosta was on the verge of being killed, if you listen to him talk about attending the rally, despite the fact of all the pictures that are now coming out of him shaking hands and taking selfies with Trump supporters. The fight, I don't want to say against the fake media, the fight between the Oval Office and CNN is escalating at a very, I don't want to say dangerous pace, but at a rapid pace. They are, CNN, the Acostas and the Lemons of the world are crying wolf because the president is calling them fake news and liars, which is exactly what we know them to have done and to be. And I got to ask you, Matt, I know we're a competitor and all the things that go with that. Where does this end up going for CNN? I don't see it turning out well for them at all.
No, I don't think so either. This weekend we had Sean Hannity on the radio, and he's spent all week calling out Jim Acosta last week. And one of the things he said is that, obviously CNN people are very upset about the crowds at the rallies chanting CNN sucks, right? Like, and well, here's the thing. CNN does suck. It's the truth, right? Like, so it's an awful network. It is fake news. They do everything they can to just criticize President Trump. They won't report the good news. Right, look, here's the deal. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't be able to hold a politician accountable. I believe in that.
That's exactly right.
And when Trump is wrong, we'll call him out. But the point is that when he's right, you need to give him credit. You need to cover it. You need to cover the good news as well as the bad news. And the problem is that these people throughout the establishment media, because of the fact that they're built on, and I've talked about this with you a million times before, the objectivity lie, right? Like, because they believe their objective, they believe their own lie, that they don't take a side. They're stuck into this whirlwind of mess. They should just come out and openly admit the fact that they are anti-Trump, anti-Republican. They are pro-Democrat. They are pro-Nancy Pelosi. They are pro-Hillary Clinton. And if they did that, they'd take an enormous burden off their shoulders, and then they could go about their business of putting out whatever stories they intend to put out and ignoring whatever ones they want to ignore.
And that's fine.
But the fact of the matter is that, I mean, that's what we do. We're openly pro-Trump, right? Like, we're openly pro-Republican.
We don't
we're
hide
openly
it.
pro-conservative. And because of that, we're able to be honest with our audience. And that honesty is a huge burden off our shoulders.
Well, you know what? And just to talk about that honesty, if CNN would come out and admit who they are, it would be easier, and because we always have. I'm going to move to the story that it's just stupid. What the hell is President Trump talking about LeBron James for? What planet? I get it. All right, I know what he's trying. It's a smart aleck comment, but the fact of the matter is, LeBron James is coming off a week in which he's done something absolutely incredible. Which, again, listen, you can argue all you want about the basketball court, LeBron James, greatest player or not, whatever, blah, 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 all his antics and the stuff, the lack of self-awareness he has, blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is, he's making people's lives better, and God bless him for doing that. Now, he gets into an interview with Don Lemon, who's a complete ass clown anyway. Trump puts himself into a situation where he basically calls LeBron stupid and then backs Michael Jordan. Why? Don't waste time on that petty stuff.
It's maybe not the best moment for Trump, and this is a time where we can step up and criticize him, and we should.
Yeah, it was stupid.
But the point is that first off, I kind of agree with them about LeBron. But the point is,
but hold on, Matt. Hold on, Matt. Hold on. No. Hold on a second. That's a legit thing. I can agree with him. It's an you know what that is? That's an off the cuff Sunday morning couch comment.
Right.
That's all that is.
The president,
That's not a presidential
doesn't need
comment.
to be weighing in on these types of things. He needs to be focused on our economy and on our national security policy and on our immigration policy and on our trade deals and all that kind of stuff. Why is he doing that? I agree with you there. I don't think it was a smart move. It's kind of backfired on him.
I would argue, Matt, that much like the NFL protest, I don't mind him weighing in, but again, one and done. Just say what you want to say. I think the protest is disrespectful to the flag, disrespectful to our veterans. Done. Don't keep talking about it because, first of all, no one wants to hear you say anything about it. We'll take care of it ourselves, number one. I stopped looking for a moral compass in the Oval Office when Bill Clinton was getting a Hummer from Monica Lewinsky. I mean, since then I haven't. The fact of the matter is I look to the Oval Office to get stuff done. He's a pragmatist. He's a problem solver. That's great. On a moral plane, there's a lot of what he's done in his life I don't agree with. I never will agree with. I think he makes him a bad guy. But the fact of the matter is our country is better off today than it was 18 months ago, and it's his fault, and that's a good thing.
One of the things, this is probably one of Trump's biggest, and look, I'm not trying to be mean to him here, but I mean, one of his flaws as a character is that he tends to take a lot of these things very personally, right? Like, and so LeBron had criticized him during the NBA Finals, right? Like, and so when he sees LeBron again, when he's watching TV, then he steps up and criticizes him. And Trump has to start putting these personal tit for tats aside and, again, focusing on that bigger picture. And if he does that, he's going to be okay. I think the other stuff that he was tweeting about the fake news, the very fake news being an enemy of the people, he's right about that.
Absolutely.
And he's 100% right about that. But it's like he distracts from the core message of what he's trying to say when he gets into these things.
He's always
and
done
so that's
that.
What he's got to do is he's got to stay on point. He's got to stay on point on this stuff. And by the way, overall, 99.9% of the time he's succeeding. And so, I mean, this has been look, this was an experiment, okay? Like, we elected somebody who's never held office before to the presidency of the United States. This is the first time in American history where somebody who's never held office before and never served in the military, right? We've had a couple generals that we've elected over history. But the point is that the first time we've ever elected somebody who's never been in public life, in a public service job, to the presidency, this experiment has worked. Okay,
Yeah.
if for the vast majority of Americans, if you ask the question, are you better off today than you were 2 years ago? The answer is absolutely yes.
Right.
But the point is that he's got to stay focused. He can't get
Well,
into
he
these
makes it
side shows
harder.
because this is only serves to help
Right.
the Democrats.
He makes it harder on himself because he's been so insanely successful at keeping his promises, which is a rarity in and of itself. But the fact of the matter is he makes the job harder than it should be. A lot of that fake news comes out of stuff that he says off the cuff. And that's where, and he's not a public speaker. He's not a politician. I don't care. He's getting stuff done. People in this country are better off today than they were 18 months ago from a financial perspective, from an employment perspective. All of the data, you can't refute. I had an argument, and it's just with a dear friend of mine who is might be the hardest of hardcore left liberals on the planet. And many of her responses to data and fact that I gave her was, I don't believe that. Okay, there's nothing. I mean,
these are
that's
facts,
all they got,
right?
Right.
By the way, if Trump was a racist, why would he be pushing policies that lead to the lowest ever African American unemployment, the lowest ever Hispanic unemployment? If he was sexist, why would he be pushing policies that lead to the lowest in 65 years women unemployment?
Sonny Johnson.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. No, I have Sonny Johnson on every week, and one of the things that Sonny says, and she's right, is that the left dictates the conversation. They make us talk about the things that they want us to talk about. Why would we be talking about a man who's not a racist being a racist based on every ounce of data? I mean, you look at the people he surrounded himself with his whole life, and the people that are on his team. He's a sexist. Over 50% of the executives in Trump Industries are women. He's done. Look at the people many of the influential people in his inner circle are women. The fact of the matter is, a pragmatist doesn't care what color skin you have, who you sleep with, or who you worship. Can you solve my problem or not? And that's the fact. That's what he. Right. I think that's why we saw so much turnover.
And by the way, a rising tide raises all boats, right? And that's the way Trump looks at it, right? He doesn't look at things based off the color of your skin, based off your ethnicity, based off your religion. He looks at things based off of, are you an American? Okay, if you're an American, you're on my team. Let's get you, let's get better here, and let's do better for everybody. And that's what he's trying to do, and it's working. Yeah. But the point is that he's got to stay focused. He can't get distracted with these.
He makes it harder. He makes it harder on all of us because at Breitbart we're clearly conservative and we're clearly fans of his, and we've made our amends and we make our beefs with him. But he makes it harder than this. Matt, I got to go. Such a great time talking to you. Always a pleasure to catch up. Take care of yourself, buddy.
Yep. Thanks, Curt.
Thanks again. Phenomenal day today. James O'Keefe. I can't wait to get feedback from that one. The interview and the work that Project Veritas has done is absolutely mind-boggling. And you heard James talk about the fact that the entire Urban Meyer story was an accident. They were actually looking into basketball. They fell into this story about Urban Meyer and his abuse of his players, and what's turned into that we're going to find out that this guy was a horrific human being. People are going to still defend him, and that's the pathetically sad part about this. My losers today they're new to the losers circle, but they've been in the mix a lot. Facebook and Apple have both decided to begin censoring speech on their platforms. Alex Jones from InfoWars, anybody that knows Alex knows that Alex can put himself at the far ends of extreme when he's commenting on things, and I believe he's being sued now by a family from Sandy Hook. For a lot of different reasons. Anyway, the Facebook and Apple have decided that they should now be censoring what he can say and what he is saying on their platforms. My struggle here is that I'm a capitalist. I like the free markets being able to dictate and decide. But the fact of the matter is these companies have far more influence than any normal company. InfoWars, they were up on Friday and now they're down. As a result of reports we received last week, we removed 4 videos on 4 Facebook pages for violating our hate speech and bullying policies. They're not doing that. That's the lie. The lie is that they're banning things that offend them, not banning things that are hate speech, because they've allowed and they continue to allow despicable, disgusting, repulsive hate speech and violent inciting speech from liberals. So anyway, and my winner today is Dinesh D'Souza. Death of a Nation, guys. Let's put it this way. You want to know how big of a deal it is? There are theaters that are pulling the movie, and when asked why they pulled the movie, they're saying that they received threats of their facilities of liberals who are threatening them if they run the movie. Death of a Nation is going to hopefully find its way in front of you, and it'll be exactly what I said earlier. You can listen. You can not like the information. You can be mad about the fact that the data and the facts are there, but you can't change them. The facts are the facts, and Death of a Nation explains in many ways how we got here, number one, but why we got here. And the left would continue to have you believe it's for reasons not attributable to them, but they're exactly the reason why we're here. And, it's not an America problem, guys. It's not an America problem. America didn't make slavery happen. Democrats did. The day the Civil War first shot was fired, not a single Republican conservative in this country owned a slave. Not one. So it's this movie, Death of a Nation, is going to be a must-see for anybody that loves this country and anybody that's after truth. We will be back tomorrow. God bless you guys. Thanks again to James O'Keefe and Matt Boyle. Have a great day, guys.
With Sonny Johnson.
Everything in hip-hop is not bad. Kanye agreed with us, so let's love him today until he raps tomorrow and you turn your back. Because if you jump off when the fun of the moment is over, then you are in fact making Kanye the token he is accused of being. So please, don't do that. Don't go there.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.